Welcome inside another edition of Mountaineer Report brought to you by West Virginia Sports Now. I am Mike Asti and I will be joined by Luke Blain. And of course, every episode of this show is available everywhere you get podcasts, also throughout the West Virginia Sports Now network and here on YouTube. And we now are going to be able to fully evaluate year one under Ross Hodge for the West Virginia basketball program. Maybe they will play in the basketball crown, the college basketball crown, regardless if they choose to play in that tournament or not. And assuming they are not going to get an at-large bid in the NCAA tournament, their year, for all intents and purposes, is really over and over enough for us to evaluate after they lose right away. Their first game, they're gone to BYU, who they beat recently as well. But BYU handles them pretty comfortably, a 20-point win as West Virginia wraps up their season right now with 18 victories under Ross Hodge in year one shy of what DeVries did a year earlier. And we're also going to talk about the opposite end of the spectrum for basketball in West Virginia and at WVU, and that is Mark Kellogg's WVU women's basketball team that won the Big 12 tournament championship, the first for the program since 2017, the first under Mark Kellogg, and now is waiting for the official word that they are going to host the NCAA tournament, the open of the NCAA tournament for them, their first two games in Morgantown at the Hope Coliseum. And as insane as that will be, recent years in the tournament, they had to go elsewhere. They eventually would win, and then they would lose to higher seeds. They never liked their seed line and would lose to dominant programs. Caitlin Clark, UNC, for example. Everything Mark Kellogg kind of wanted out of this year, his goals of winning the Big 12, being able to host, maybe get to a Sweet 16. That's the next bar. All of that now has either happened or in front of the women's team. But before we get to the women's team, we're going to talk about the men's team. So, Luke, how are you? You have been covering this men's team all year and, of course, tapped into what the women's team is doing as well in their special season. So, you were very, very high in the men's team coming into the year, and you were wrong. Many of us, though, were incorrect as well. Had to throw that out there. I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
I was wrong in a way as well because I don't know if I even thought they would get to this point. I was wrong in the other direction. I thought they'd be worse than this, but they ended up with 18 wins. So we're going to talk about our evaluation. But before we get to the full evaluation of Ross Hodge in year one, your thoughts on the BYU loss? They turned it over too much. They weren't physical enough. BYU looked like they had the better player and were the better team despite losing to West Virginia a couple weeks earlier. Is it just that simple for you?
Yeah, well, it's hard to beat good teams twice. A lot of coaches will often say that, and I think that was shown in this
Yeah.
game as well. But I mean, I think you really encapsulated it pretty well in that WVU just flat out was sloppy with the basketball. There were too many dumb turnovers, a lot of dumb I mean, they set their season high in turnovers in the Big 12
Yeah.
tournament. You can't do
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
expect to win. You can't do that and expect it to even be close, and it wasn't. I mean, they lost by 20 yesterday.
Yeah.
So you look at that, they were getting out physicaled. That was a big problem. I mean, BYU ultimately looked like they wanted it more. And you got to wonder if a lot of the recent losses started to pile up mentally for this WVU team. And of
Yeah.
course, that's never something you want to say in an accusatory way, but you also, you have to think, I mean, you have to go into this tournament with the mindset that you have to win the whole thing in order to make it to March. And then, you took some punches in the mouth early and they didn't go. I tweeted this out yesterday. They went the last 8 minutes without putting the ball through the hoop from the field. After the 8-minute mark, there was technically a field goal, but it was a goaltend on a Jasper Floyd layup. So, I mean, it didn't go in. It counted as a field goal, but you didn't put the ball through the hoop. It really felt like a full encapsulation of this team's season where it's sloppy offense and you're taking bad shots. You're not making any of your shots. You're getting, the other team is being more physical in the paint.
Yeah.
It looked like everything finally piled up and WVU just wasn't able to compete in this one. Looked like a complete 180 from whenever WVU hosted BYU in Morgantown.
It really looked like the culmination of the worst of West Virginia basketball this year. Turning it over too much. Really, you hit the nail on the head there. Dumb mistakes, boneheaded mistakes, rough turnovers to have at the worst possible time in, you could argue, the biggest game of the season because they couldn't lose it. It was a must win. It wasn't just one of the losses, it was a must win. And then, I mean, Debansa went wild. He dominated. It looked like he learned a little bit from kind of being contained by West Virginia in their loss. And you mentioned West Virginia maybe kind of getting sick of the season a little bit, or maybe getting sluggish because of their recent losses. They didn't think they were gonna get in, but you would have thought that would have created a sense of urgency that we got to win this tournament. We got to at least get to the championship game. We got to impress the committee, and even if we don't win the title, we got to show them that we can hang with these teams that they probably are going to put in the NCAA tournament, like a BYU, like anyone else they could meet in the field there. And other teams in the field they beat this year. They swept Cincinnati, they swept UCF, but they can't get there because they couldn't get by BYU. And I did feel weary about the matchup, to be honest, Luke. I mean, you could argue it might have been better for them to play Cincinnati or UCF just because, yeah, they beat those teams and it's hard to beat somebody 3 times. But with BYU, you just played them, you just beat them. They have a scouting report too. They have the NBA draft pick. You don't have that guy. And it just felt like that BYU was not going to lose to West Virginia twice in a couple weeks with an NBA draft pick. That's kind of what happened. It wasn't going to happen, and he was able to take over the game. In the first half, just Debansa himself, he was only a few points away from West Virginia on his lonesome against the entire effort by the
I mean,
Mountaineers.
he was getting into the paint at will.
Yeah,
That's not something they allowed him to do the first time around.
yeah,
And we're seeing a bunch of stuff. Maybe it's the court. Maybe they couldn't just. Maybe they were slipping and stuff like that. But you're both playing on the same court, so
yeah,
to me it doesn't matter. And they were just getting. I mean, they were getting out physical down low. I mean, they were
yeah.
getting to the paint at will. They didn't even have to take it from the 3-point line a lot. Debansa didn't make any threes in that game, and
He didn't
that's
need
one
to
of
take
his
any threes.
specialties.
Didn't
Yeah,
need
he
to take any
didn't
threes.
need to take any, and
Yeah,
he got 27 points without doing that. And
that's
that's,
insane.
that in a team that prides itself on defense, that's just an unacceptable performance at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the other issue is they kind of calmed him down, and I don't necessarily know if it was really West Virginia's defense doing this or he kind of pulled back the reins a little bit, but he had a rough start to the second half. 27 points, 17 of them were in that first half. He ended up really having a little bit of a calmer second half, but the rest of BYU was able to take the charge, and West Virginia just got on this cold streak offensively, which has been their problem and their Achilles heel all year, that they go through these scoring droughts in games. Sometimes defensively they can still win, but you can't really be a quality team and have 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes without a field goal, without doing anything on offense. How are you going to beat anybody during that if they're going to wake up and score themselves? So the scoring drought coupled with the rest of BYU waking up, add in Debansa whenever he would do something in the second half, they were able to pull away and end up with a 20-point win. And honestly, Luke, and this was said on the broadcast, even when West Virginia was in the game, because they pulled within 3, they hung there within single digits most of that game, probably 80% of that game until the end. It felt like the Mountaineers were down by 20. Even when they were down 3, when down 5, down 6, it felt like they might as well have been down 20 because they would go through these scoring droughts or they would have single possessions that would just make you roll your eyes. Sometimes when they would score, and this has also been the case all year, even when they would score and Honor Huff would hit a clutch 3, it was almost a shot that you're wincing, saying you shouldn't really take it. It's not a quality shot. Okay, he hits it and drills it because he's a talented sharpshooter, but Eagle staff would miss wide open shots and they just would have no rhythm on offense. They just kind of would pass it again. And this will get into maybe more of the conversation on Ross Hodge that we talked about in the past show. I think Ross Hodge is an intelligent basketball mind. I know he's drawing up plays, but for whatever reason, when they get on the floor, it doesn't really look like they're running plays. It looks like they're just drawing up in the dirt and then they're playing pickup basketball. And that's not going to work in high level college basketball in the Big 12, and then if you would get in the NCAA tournament. That's just not going to work against this type of quality competition. That's really what it looked like. They didn't have any sense of consistency. They didn't know what they were doing on offense, and we're many games into the season now. This is not like we're in November where okay, you're learning a system. So it just wasn't good enough offensively, even when they've been good enough defensively, and that's how you get here with only 18 wins. You're not going to be a tournament team. You miss opportunities earlier in the season. Maybe if you would have had 20, 21, 22 wins and you go to lose to BYU that way or whoever, maybe you still get an at-large bid because Jalen already had him outside the bubble and even on the bubble a week and a half ago with their current resume. If you had a few games swing the other way, you don't have that Utah loss recently, for example, you're probably getting in. And there's 5 games you can look at, but even if you only win 2 or 3 of those, you might actually get an at-large bid because Cincinnati, UCF teams you beat, they're getting more love because they have more wins on the board and they didn't squander all those opportunities, even though maybe you have some quality wins and those quad 1 wins. So they can kind of blame themselves for this year, but that BYU game was just the worst of it. And even their rough losses recently in their slump, the BYU game was the worst of it and just was so much of an embodiment of the year. But you don't want to see a West Virginia team and even a Ross Hodge team, because he's known for this, to be out physicaled is really the way of saying it. To be out physicaled. And they were out physicaled. So they were out physicaled. And you don't want to see that again, but building the future, you need more on offense, and the defense is probably okay. That strategy is probably okay, but you can't go with just that and nothing on offense. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report, West Virginia Sports Now, and the Mountaineers, they didn't really show up for their first game of the Big 12 tournament, so now they're done. And I wrote about this. We talked about this. Maybe we'll get into this when it actually is decided if they should accept a bid to the college basketball crown. There's a Big 12 relationship there. It will be that or nothing. It won't be the NIT, and certainly seems like they're not getting the NCAA tournament. I don't know if I think they should go. It really is going to depend on the players and what Ross Hodge wants to do. I've pretty much heard from the program they're going to give it up to Ross Hodge, who then will ask the players. And you got to have your stars go. They can get some money out of it, but not all that much. Before we get there, though, and you thought this team would be better than what it is, but the evaluation of the roster and the recruiting talent, they didn't really hit enough. Honor Huff maybe exceeded expectations, but he was supposed to be the number 2. Eagle staff certainly did not get to expectations. He had a roller coaster of a year that just was not good enough, and the rest of the team offensively wasn't good enough. Even when they were great defensively, they weren't good enough offensively. And Obioa would even has his ups and downs. And in the Big 12 tournament game, he couldn't set his feet and talk about dumb mistakes. He would allow screens and illegal screens off of that. So how do you evaluate this season, though? It is year 1 under Ross Hodge. They get basically back to where DeVries had them with a little bit worse of a resume. They're going to miss the tournament again. It'll be 3 years in a row for this program, which hadn't happened in 2 decades. That's not all on Hodge, but year 1 for you, how would you describe it?
I was thinking about this earlier, and part of me wants to ask the question, how different really? There are some obvious differences,
Sure.
and I'm not going to try to say that there weren't that many, but how many differences really were there between DeVries' first year and Ross Hodge's first year?
Very similar.
They,
Very similar. I would say
I think
bigger
that
wins for DeVries. I mean, you have 3
bigger win,
top
yeah,
10
absolutely.
wins,
Bigger
bigger
wins for
wins.
DeVries,
Yeah.
but the lows were still low. You were still
Right.
losing to bottom Big 12 talent. Now, granted, you had some
Yeah.
injuries during DeVries' season,
That's his
but
excuse, I
also,
guess. Yeah.
yeah, you can make that one. But also, you have the fact that both offenses were being run by primarily one player,
Yeah.
maybe 2. And I think that that's something that, and I'm not trying to make it seem, I'm not trying to put either coach on a pedestal here, but I think maybe it's just safe to say that this looked like a team that was under its under a new coach. You know what I mean? I think that it looked like the offensive system might not, it wasn't as polished, I will say, as DeVries was. DeVries, I think, definitely had more of an offensive emphasis than Hodge did, and you saw the fruits of that absolutely.
Yeah.
But
And he had the best
y-
player of the two groups. Javon Small was the best player out
yes,
of either roster. So
yes,
DeVries did have the best player out of both teams. And I know some say, well, without Small, where would he have been? You do have to give credit to recruiting. I think that's
yeah,
Hodge's issue and will be what he needs to focus on this coming off season, that you need to get the Javon Small equivalent. That was the issue. They didn't really have a Javon Small. They did not have a power four transfer. There was no Javon Small. Honor Huff as your best player might be fun to watch in a way, but if you give Javon Small to this year's team, they're a tournament team. You need the Javon Small equivalent, and then let Honor Huff be below him. And then if you have that guy, it might not even be a big deal that Eagle staff was up and down. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, both coaches had their bright moments, had their big wins. They also had their issues. Maybe DeVries can have the excuse issue off of injury, but no one's going to give him that because, how hurt were all those guys, namely Tucker DeVries, that might have been dragged out for, to get him to Indiana, which they end up missing the tournament as well. They're not going to get in themselves with also a bad tournament loss, and Mountaineer fans can at least have that. And Tucker DeVries' career will end without making an NCAA tournament with either West Virginia or Indiana. So they got in with Drake. But think about it, if you're Tucker DeVries, the two historic programs and the freaking blue blood at Indiana, you don't get in with either one of them, and you do make it with the mid-major. So I'm sure when he transferred to bigger schools, he thought he would make runs with those bigger schools, and it doesn't happen.
I saw somebody make the point earlier, and I can't remember who it was. Somebody on Twitter said that, like, they really had it all at Drake. Like, that group that they had the year before
I did see
DeVries
somebody
left,
see that maybe he shouldn't have
they
left there, right?
yeah,
All that,
maybe shouldn't have left, and
yeah.
maybe, like, maybe he was ready to run it back. Like, the team was probably ready to run it back, honestly, and they probably could have kept a lot of those guys around.
Yeah, they would have been
But,
perennial tournament team, but I mean, financially, he would never have made even the
yeah,
West Virginia money or certainly the Indiana money, which is even that much and then some at Drake. They could pay him all they wanted. They never would have got to what he's getting at Indiana. And you imagine the ceiling someday. I mean, enjoy this now. I still think at some point he's going to hit the ground running in Indiana. I mean, there's a lot of money there, like the boosters and the donors and the alumni base. They love donating money to sports. Just look at what happened with Kirk Zanetti. Yeah, he's a great coach, but they put a lot of money in there. They're going to give some to DeVries as well. They don't like the basketball program sucking. I'm sure he's going to get some cash. Players are always going to want to go there. He's still a basketball hotbed, despite what's going on with Signetti. I'd imagine in the next decade he's going to make a run or two if he's still there. Who knows? Maybe he wouldn't be still there, but even in this contract, as long as he's not fired soon, I would think he's going to have a chance to make a run. And they're not going to cut bait after 1 year. So enjoy this now. At least Tucker won't be part of it. But yeah, I did see someone. I think I saw the same tweet that someone kind of maybe if he wouldn't have left, or maybe he's even a better fit for what he wants to do at West Virginia than at Indiana. I mean, we've seen coaches make decisions to go to better spots and it not work out. He could easily look back 5 years from now and think, I maybe should have stayed at WVU, or maybe I should have stayed at Drake. Nonetheless, he's at Indiana. You would think the best job of the three, and they're basically on level with West Virginia. And yeah, maybe if he was still at Drake, then maybe they would make a run and be like the Miami of Ohio, run through that conference. And who knows? It's hard to believe they'd make a run through the tournament, though. But back to Hodge, though. How would you evaluate Hodge himself? I mean, obviously there's the comparison with DeVries, and I think the positive, which is why I don't want to call it a full-on quote-unquote bad year. You took over a program with drama. You brought a new roster in, and you at least do get them back to where they were. It's not like there's a true regression. We can argue the resume. I do think DeVries' was better. There was one more quad one win. There was more ranked wins. He had one more overall win. But at the end of the day, you're both on the bubble. There's highs, there's lows. It's very similar. It's a similar spot. Yet, there were a lot of missed opportunities. And in recruiting, Luke, I mean, he said to me to my face at the WVU fan caravan in Pittsburgh, I know you wrote that you thought this would actually work out, that he was comfortable with who he recruited. He thought they'd be good enough on offense. They're veterans. Power Four schools wanted them, even if they didn't play in the Power Four. He thought this recruiting team, this recruiting class and this group would win. It would be a tournament team, and he knew there was pressure to get in right away. Clearly, he was wrong there. So that needs improved. And if you're going to give him grades on recruiting, I can't give anything higher than a D or a C at best in recruiting. I mean, the team didn't get in the tournament. How can you be ahead of a C if you don't make the tournament? In terms of coaching, I think he's a good coach, but again, some of these offensive plays didn't look like they were going anywhere.
Yeah, and that's what's frustrating about the recruiting aspect of this team, right? I mean, coming into the season, it's not like people put the weight of being a number one scoring option on Trace and Eaglestaff's shoulders out
Yeah.
of nowhere, right? It's
Yeah.
because he
Right.
was that good. And I still believe he is that good. I just don't think the offensive system really benefited anybody on this
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
I think other than maybe Honor Huff, who gets to hit a highlight corner fadeaway three every game, I just don't think
Yeah.
the way the offense was run was beneficial to the team and the way they were structured. And you can call that recruiting, you can call that schematic, you can probably say that's a bit more schematic, but I mean, this is a team that had fans excited at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I think people forget about that way too quickly. Um,
Yeah.
but I just don't. I think the way they meshed, and it really just brings me back to, and we've talked about this a few times before. What Hodge said early in non-conference play was when he said, sometimes you don't reach your full potential with the team, and you just kind of have to live with that. And I
Yeah.
absolutely don't think this team hit their ceiling in terms of what they are capable of doing. I think that an offensive mindset would have benefited this team a lot more. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to sit here and act like I know all of WVU's sets or
Yeah.
the plays that they run, anything like that. But you can turn defense into offense, but you're not going to score points on defense. And dragging the really good teams down into the mud with you rarely works. You have to find a way to put the ball in the hoop and score points consistently if you want to compete in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a lesson to take away from this year. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm all high and mighty and know the lessons that Ross Hodge needs to learn from this year. But I will say I think I like defense. I'm perfectly fine with defense. Heck, my dad's a defensive coach, and I love
Right.
watching. I greatly appreciate that.
Right.
But you have to have that balance of offensive consistency, and they just didn't have that. And
Yeah.
there were some weak points where I think you needed to have better strength. I think you needed Harlan Obioha to be better consistently this season. And I think a big difference in between last night's game against BYU and the first time was Harlan
Yeah.
Obioha played a
Yeah.
decent game. Harlan Obioha played a decent game the first time around, and last night he was not good.
Yeah.
And
And that's a
that is a
little.
major
Yeah.
problem.
That's a major point. And if you recall, this was maybe a month ago. And I might have asked him this, but maybe somebody else asked him this. But I know that we did a Zoom, and Ross Hodge was literally asked about the importance of Harlan Obioha. And it looks like there's kind of a through line. We even talked about this on this show that regardless of everything else, regardless of Eagle Staff's peaks and valleys, and back when he had 1 point to 20-point games, no matter what Honor Huff's doing, no matter what the team is doing, it looked like throughout most of this year, and that's when we asked Hodge about it, there was a through line between if Obioha plays well and he is a beast and uses his size, like Fran Fraschilla was saying he could play in the NFL. I don't know about that. We'll ask Andy Reid, who was there to watch the game. Fran Fraschilla brought that up probably 8 times. If
A
you were doing
lot.
a drinking game, you would be drunk if you had to
I saw
take a
Andy
shot
Reid
every
on
time you.
TV more times last night than I did Ross Hodge.
Well, that's very true. And then every time you see Andy Reid, Fran Fraschilla would say that Obioha is who he's scouting, and he's going to go
Yeah.
to the NFL and be a tight end. And who knows? But if Arlen Obioha plays like a NFL tight end with a physical mentality, and he sets his feet, so he has smart basketball IQ with his physical ability, and he becomes that force down low. When he's that guy, when he's at his best, when Obioha is at his best, West Virginia usually won this year. When Arlen Obioha is not setting his feet, is committing illegal screens. I think he did 3 in the BYU game. Like, those are just free points. It's insane. Or he's just kind of playing timid, or he's usually the bulkier, more muscular, stronger, kind of like country strong. than anybody else on the court, but he doesn't always use it. When he's at his worst, or just not good enough, I guess, they don't have a chance. And the BYU game in the tournament, Obioha was really at his worst. That's the worst of it. He's committing fouls. He's not enough offensively. He's not enough defensively. His size doesn't really matter. He's not using it right. But when he's giving you enough and he's at his best, or at least close to, like in the BYU win or in other wins when they beat Kansas, those games, back to the backyard brawl earlier in the season, he was a beast in that game. That game still might be his best game as a Mountaineer. Then they have a chance. But Ross Hodge talked a lot about how he is kind of that key. They don't have tons of size. He's the physical player. You can argue DJ Thomas too, but Arlen Obioha is more of a veteran. He's the physical beast. He's the difference maker. He's kind of that guy for them, and he's the straw that stirs the drink. And when he's at his best, they have a chance, and when he's not and when he's off, they don't. Hodge admitted that a month ago when we asked him. And we saw it ever since. And we saw it throughout the whole season, if you really look at it. So I think that's also an issue. We can't go back in time now, and I'm not going to put the whole season on Harlan Obioha. Granted, a lot of that of what I just said is true. He wasn't supposed to be the number one guy. But clearly for future recruiting, he needs to get at least one Power 4 transfer. I'm not asking for the sun, moon, and the stars financially. Javon Small was the number 3 at a Big 12 school. He was not getting $1 million, okay? He was getting a nice chunk of change. He was the P4 transfer. You get one guy like that, not 2 or 3. You spend money for one guy like that. Then you bring in the Honor Huffs of the world to go underneath that guy. You can still build as a defensive, first-minded team. That's how Houston won the conference a year ago, but Houston also was able to score 90 points if they have to. They mixed the two. Look at their tournament games last year during their run to the championship game. They would have 90-plus points in some of those. And, yeah, they'd also win 65-62. They can do whatever. They are that good on both sides of the court. That's what you need. But you need a Power 4 player. You need an undercard. You need a strong defensive team. You need a little bit more size and more than just one Arlen Obioha. You need more than one guy like that can control the paint and do it offensively and defensively for you. Because if one guy's off, you need another guy that can step up. They didn't really have that this year. It was a flawed roster. So what I will kind of disagree, I guess, Luke, on, I kind of think this team might have reached their ceiling. I mean, as I'm talking now, the roster was kind of flawed. Yes, people got excited by Eagle Staff in the 50-point game a year ago and the 40 against Alabama. People forget that. Yes, he was in North Dakota. He had a 40-point game against Bama, against good teams. So he's proven he can score against good teams. It's harder when you have other guys to share the rock with, but it shouldn't be such a roller coaster that he literally took one shot in a game. Like, take more shots. That was always the issue with him. Take more shots, try more, but also have them be quality shots. He would take a lot of bad shots whenever he would take shots. But with him, with Honor Huff, with Lorient, with Floyd, with Arlen Obioha, with DJ Thomas, it was a fun team to watch. They were high character guys. You almost got to feel that all of them could be on a winner. And I know that Brandon Lorient did experience a winner in the NCAA tournament a couple years ago, but they could all be on winners as role players. I don't know if any of them can lead the way to a team that makes the tournament or really goes on a deep run. And as Ross Hodge is figuring things out, it's only his third year as a D1 coach, which is why I criticized the hire in the first place, even though I think eventually could be the right fit at West Virginia, and he's certainly not going anywhere now, that it was probably just a flawed group altogether. I mean, Hodge is learning on the fly, a lot of pressure at WVU in comparison to North Texas, and all these issues with the roster. I don't know what more you would have got out of them. Granted, there were games they should have won. They didn't. They should have beat Clemson. They should have beat Ohio State. They should have certainly beat Utah at the end of the year. That's just 3 right there. I mean, I can add more.
Baylor, TCU, Kansas State.
I mean, any of those. I mean, you're not going to flip all of them, but say you flip half of them. You flip half of them, you're in the tournament with this roster. You win. I honestly think if you would have won 2 more, you'd probably be at least a bubble team. 20 wins right now, you'd at least be a bubble team. You'd have the same resume as the Cincinnati's, the UCFs, who are either on the bubble or getting in, according to Lenardi. And those are teams you beat. But their resumes are just better because they didn't drop those games that are winnable that you should have won. They won those games and then lost to you. But you beat them and lost those games. Like, you got to have a little bit more on the wins-loss ledger. So it was a missed opportunity year. It could have been more. what do you want to see from Hodge now moving forward throughout now what'll be his second off season, but really first true one after his first year is in the books now before that year two season. We'll get to the pressure in a moment, but what do you need to see accomplished to be confident that the Ross Hodge era is going to be a good one? Because now there's more pressure on year two after year one misses the tournament.
Yeah, well, I think you absolutely need to just overall have a better recruiting class than what you did last year, like you've said. Or I think you need to have a better top-heavy recruiting class. Let's
Yeah,
assume, for sake of argument, they keep Amir Jenkins, DJ Thomas around. They keep all these freshmen, which I will say, I think the current freshman group that they have, as
yeah.
specifically the group that they had redshirt, puts this team in a better position for the future than people realize. I'm not going to say that
We got to
they're going to
retain those
like
guys.
yeah,
You got to.
you got to retain them, right? Yeah, if you keep them around, yeah, I think that I really like Evans Barning. I think Jaden Forsyth has a chance to be like a solid number two shooting option.
Okay.
But you do got to keep those guys around, I'm not going to say they're going to stick around for 4 years and like lead WVU to the Final Four. But when it comes to the off season, you need to find that dominant inside presence, and I think it needs to be from a Power Four school, like you've said, at the very least from the Big East, right? So
Do you want
if we're
that
not counting
guy?
them as Power Four,
Yeah. Well, that's actually an interesting point. If because of the money situation, likely they would have the money for either one really good, like Javon Small type power four guy, or two that maybe are lesser than Javon Small level. Would you rather get one power four guy that's like a Javon Small? So he is going to be your forward, maybe your guard. He's going to be your leading scorer. And then you're probably down to a lower level with the size, the big guy, the honor huffs, the secondary scorer. Maybe you retain your roster. Or would you rather them, as you're saying, replace the Obioha position with a power four beast, and then maybe you're willing to have the leading scorer be a mid major, if you get what I'm asking. I don't think you're going to have a roster full of power four guys here. So you got to
yeah,
think, where do you want this money to go?
I think you really need to prioritize the center position. I honestly
Okay.
do. I think that height is
Okay.
so important in the Big 12. I mean, you look at what Arizona does to teams week in and week out, and like they just do that primarily because they just have a bunch of 6'8" plus
Yeah.
athletic freaks out there. And
Yeah.
you need one of those. Like you need another 7-footer down there that you can trust, somebody strong, lanky. I mean, if they can pull up for a three-pointer every once in a while, so be it. But I think you need somebody who can really sit down there and control the paint and not get pushed around down low. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Harlan Obioha was just like I don't want to call him a bust. I'm not going to call him that.
Yeah.
He had some good stretches early. He had some fine stretches in Big 12 play. He wasn't what you
He is
need.
what he is. He it's
He
hard
yeah
to say he
he
has to
wasn't
be
he
what you're
wasn't what you needed
describing.
him to be. He
Right.
absolutely wasn't what you needed him to be.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to get somebody P4 somewhere to control
Okay.
the inside. DJ
Okay.
Thomas does a good job. If he can have the opportunity to complement somebody else on the
Yeah.
inside there, that'd be good. I know everybody wants the flashy guard play, everybody wants the Javon Small, but 2 years
Right.
ago or last year, this team had a Javon Small, literally, and they
Yeah, Javon Small. Yeah.
and they didn't have the size for much of the year.
Yeah.
And they were a smaller Big 12 team, and it hurt them. And they lost games that they shouldn't have. As
Yeah.
much as this year's WVU team did it, a lot of people will forget, as fun as it was last year, that I mean, they lost almost the amount of games that you should win. They lost games to bad teams as the
They
Big
did.
12 play
They
went
did.
on.
They
Their
did.
better wins were early in Big 12 play, and it felt like they got worse as Big 12 play went on because they were getting out rebounded. They were giving up points in the paint, second chance points, everything you can imagine, because they didn't have that inside presence to rebound. I think Amir Jenkins and Miles Sadler will be able to hold down the guard positions if you can have a good 1-2 of them up there in the starting lineup next year. I
Okay.
think that will be just fine, assuming you keep Amir Jenkins around. But definitely, it's just been a trend the past few years. WVU just hasn't had that inside presence aside from Jesse Edwards, but I think you could put an asterisk next to that year in terms of any statistical category. So that is that's my thoughts on
The
where
last
WVU should
time
prioritize.
the last time West Virginia had the player you're describing was probably Culver.
Yeah.
Like that's a
I
while
mean,
ago
I
now.
know that the one I'm thinking of too is a little undersized, but Sags Kanate, man, he was like
That's fair, but
yeah,
in
a
terms of the
little
size as
undersized.
well, and um, yeah, I mean like an Oscar Shibwe, like type of like that type of guy. And this again, we're going years ago back to Huggins, back when they were making the NCAA tournament. That type of player, it's been a minute, and I'm not saying the recent coaches haven't wanted to get that guy. There's been other issues. Obviously, Eilert's year was just tons of drama, and there was no time to do anything, and the whole thing was sunk before it started. And I think he was in over his head. DeVries had more time, but he built it one way and then it collapsed at the end. And the same thing with Hodge. And that's one thing to compare the two coaches so far. And we're even seeing it from DeVries this year in Indiana. Again, I think these are two quality coaches, Luke, but I think there's pressure on both of them next year that whether they get in or not, it looked like the teams got worse as the season went on. And even DeVries' Indiana team. So 3 years in a row, West Virginia with DeVries got worse as the season went on. Hodge, West Virginia, got worse as the season went on. And then DeVries, Indiana, got worse as the season went on. These are very similar coaches in terms of what they're putting out there. So it is fair for the overlying point that if DeVries did not choose to leave and you did not have all that drama and you bring DeVries back and you then would have Tucker DeVries, you're still going to lose Javon Small and you're building around him. It's possible you're getting in the same result again. It is possible. I mean, assuming then Tucker DeVries plays all year, West Virginia only got 8 games out of him, but we just saw Tucker DeVries play most of the season with Indiana, and they're going to miss the tournament. So it's far from a guarantee that you would have got him if you had him all year. I mean, who knows? But it's an interesting situation of these last 2 years. They both end up bubbling out and getting those bubbles popped and having very similar ends to those seasons and maybe different reasons they don't make it. I still will contend that DeVries' team should have made it with 6 quad one wins, 3 top 10 wins, and the Tucker DeVries being injured reason is just insane from Bubba Cunningham. They had a better resume than North Carolina. But this year's WVU team, I can't even argue. Like, they don't deserve to be there. They don't deserve to be there. You look at the bubble, it's not great, but their resume is still worse, and they squandered opportunities earlier in the year. And I do think recruiting is going to be very, very important. I mean, Sadler's coming in. That's a 5-star recruit. How much can you rely on him in year one, though, to be that scorer for you? That might be a risk. Out of the players that could come back with eligibility remaining, and I already see somebody here as we are streaming live, but we'll have this in podcast form. Again, Mountaineer Report available everywhere you get your podcast. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here with West Virginia Sports Now, bringing up DJ Thomas being the top priority. Do you agree with that? Is there somebody else out of the players that can come back? Who do you want to bring back the most? And if you go to Ren Baker, and he says, we have this much money, where's your, because this might even be a conversation, like, what's your priority here? That's why I even asked you on how much you want to give to the center or to another guard. Money's only going to go to certain spots. All these players may want more to come back. That's just how college sports is today. Who's your top priority to bring back from the remaining players with eligibility? And if you want to give a ranking, you can. It's the odds of bringing them all back is probably low.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Just the
think
way the
so.
sport is today.
I'll go with the primary ones who got minutes this year. I will say I think you're fine letting Morris Ugasuk walk. He gave some good defensive possessions this year. He hit some shots when you needed him to, and he gave some good minutes in spurts in games.
Yeah.
But you don't. I think that you could absolutely look at putting your money elsewhere when it comes to conversations about recruiting in the off season and things like that. I think the top 2 options obviously are Amir Jenkins and DJ Thomas.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to say who would be the most important. I think that it's kind of rare to find a young player that is as poised as DJ Thomas is down low. And for all the rambling
Yeah,
I did about how important the front court is, I think it would be kind of ridiculous for me to not say that he that he should be the guy that you look at to bring back. And right behind him, I'm going to put Amir Jenkins. I think he
yeah,
has a chance to be a very special defensive guard. There's some offensive kinks that need worked out, but I really do think he has a very high ceiling in terms of being a Big 12 guard. Um, has a very good like facilitating ability, very quick in transition, light on his feet. He has a really good package as a young freshman guard. And right behind those two, I'm going to put Jackson Fields. I think a lot of people are forgetting that Jackson Fields is gonna well, I mean, he didn't walk on senior night, so there's that. I think he is expecting to get another year of eligibility, and to keep him around and say pair him with DJ Thomas and have 2 6'8" forwards already on the team
yeah,
heading into the
yeah,
recruiting cycle, I think that would be huge. And if you
yeah.
wanna,
And then you
if you
add
keep
a
Yep,
6'10" power four guy, then you
yep,
have like an Arizona Houston recipe where you
yep,
have enough bigs and you have a backup if one's off. Like
yep.
again, maybe you spend the money with the Javon Small type, but if you do kind of what you're saying, you would build a bigger team and the biggest West Virginia team that has probably been there in 5 years.
Yep. And then say you keep guys like Evans Barning, and then you keep Evans Barning is a good 6'7" right there. And then there's Abraham Oyedir, who's 6'9", who
Yeah.
redshirted last year. He'll be a redshirt sophomore next year. And maybe you could give him an opportunity as well. But I think that, there's chances if you can keep just a few of these guys around and continue
Yeah.
to keep work them into the system, you might not have to do as much work in the forward position as a whole next year, but you could focus on maybe getting that splash signing of a power four guy who can step up and lead that group and have the depth behind him.
Yeah.
I really like DJ Thomas. I think he's a great player. I think that you need some guys to complement him, even if you are going to throw the bag at him and try to keep him around. But also you're
He
also
probably
treading
would
on
cost the most money to keep, I would imagine.
I think so.
Because he was a
And then
top recruit even coming in. He's going to have hype. The other schools are going to want him. Yeah.
yeah. And then Amir Jenkins is, I I do think like that if you could honestly do a 1A, 1B type situation with those two
Yeah.
freshmen,
Yeah.
because keeping Amir Jenkins would be so important because I'm not sure how much like as great of a player Miles Sadler is, he's proving himself out there right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
playing really, really well. I'm not sure how much you want him running the point in his freshman year
Yeah. Yeah.
in a starting role.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you could definitely try to keep Amir Jenkins and have him try do that for a little while. But if you let Amir Jenkins walk, then your only ball handler that you have for sure going into next year is Sadler.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to do some work in the portal there. But I think that best case scenario, absolute best case scenario is they keep DJ Thomas and Amir Jenkins.
Yeah, those are clearly the two top priorities, and it's hard not to say DJ Thomas would be the top priority. It's almost to keep him away from someone else as well. But
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to build a bigger team, and Hodge admitted size matters, and this team really didn't have enough of it. Again, if Obioha's off, they're screwed, and it's hard to win with Honor Huff being so undersized and being your best player and leading scorer. So you do need to build it differently. You do need to build it bigger, and maybe the money is better served at the center position and maybe get. I mean, there are a lot of great scorers around the country. If Eagle staff would have scored to the effectiveness of a year ago, or even half of it, don't have to do what he did, but even half of it, this team maybe will be a tournament team as is. So there are different things that if they went the other way, they were close enough. Like there's reason for optimism. As much as I do think Hodge has to learn a lot, as much as I do think that he didn't have a good enough year with the standard of the program, that's the case. I mean, I asked him this at the intro presser. It's not your fault of what happened the prior years, but the weight of the world is now on you. They hadn't missed 3 years in a row in 2 decades. You don't get in, that's going to be 3 years in a row. The fan base is hungry. They're sick of this. They don't want to hear Ren Baker say 31 appearances for getting snubbed on these all-time lists. You know how you get back in the respect of the all-time categories? You start winning currently. So it'll same thing with football as well. And you got to get in. They didn't. So it's not if West Virginia basketball is not in the NCAA tournament, it can't be a successful year. In all reality, the standard is getting in. They say it. I'm saying it. That's what history tells you. You're not going to get in every year, nor have they throughout history. But that's the standard. They didn't get there this year. And the resume is even worse than a year ago. So they're back to the same point, but a little regressed. The roster had flaws. They lost games they shouldn't have lost. And Hodge made his mistakes as well. But in all reality, it's year one, a transfer roster. He took over drama. He's still a young coach. Great recruiting class coming in, at least so far with what we're seeing. Obviously, Sadler is a great 5-star to bring in. Those are reasons for optimism moving forward. It is only one year into this thing. If he's 6-7 years into this thing and you have this type of year, I could see the freak out. I could see a freak out even 2 or 3 years in if he does this. But we're 1 year in. You got to give him the one freaking year. Like, he's not going anywhere. And if you're West Virginia, you finally have some stability. He's not leaving. You don't want him to leave. He's not trying to leave. There's no rumors. No one's arguing on social media on which school's talking to him. He's there. He's coming back. You finally are able to build off what you just did. And I think part of why you want to bring some players back, Luke, this is maybe the issue for maybe the football program too. I believe they built a better roster talent-wise than a year ago, but they lost more than they wanted to lose. And that the issue with that is, and what Rich Rod has even said, it takes a minute to implement your culture, your mentality, your system into anyone, no matter how talented they are. And having some players that are incumbents, bringing back DJ Thomas, bringing back Jenkins, bringing back anybody else would allow you to have some extensions of yourself. Like Hodge talked about this past year that he didn't even trust the guys to do their own huddle until they're almost in December. If you bring back some guys that were with you a year ago and there's any issues at practice or in games, or even the better player who comes aboard doesn't know a set, you can say, hey, DJ Thomas has run it for 2 years now. He knows it. He can help you. Like, you want a confidant and a friend who can maybe help you, even if you're more talented. It's better to have some continuity and somebody who knows the offense, knows the defense, knows the coaching staff. Like, even the assistants are still going to be there. I mean, if you come in and you're Sadler and you're, doing something the coaches don't like, DJ Thomas can say, hey, I was you a year ago as the top recruit, and this is how you get on their good side. This is what you do wrong. Like, you need some mentorship. Having it just be all new and letting the freshmen run things is an incredible risk unless you have all 5 stars and you're, a blue blood. Like, that's not the life. So I do think you need to bring some guys in, keep some continuity there, allow them to be kind of the leaders, get more talent, more offensive talent, at least one power 4 player, no matter who he freaking is. You got to have some P4 experience, and you also got to get bigger. And you can't be getting out physicaled. You can't be turning it over 22 times in tournament games. Those things can't go down. You got to be better in non-conference play because, yeah, you're beating the Campbells of the world, but you got to beat them by more than 10. I mean, Hodge brought that up too. Their metrics would be better if they would have mopped the floor with those teams. They beat them, but I mean, UCF and Cincinnati beat those teams by 20 plus. WVU beat those teams by 10 plus. And clearly, if you can beat Cincinnati and UCF, you can beat those teams by more. You didn't do it though. So there's a sense of urgency in all the games for the full resume. I don't know if they knew that or played like they knew that all this past season. But again, he's not going anywhere, and we're going to debate and analyze and talk about Ross Hodge in year one, I'm sure, much more as we get further into the offseason. If they do go to the Crown, whatever happens there, granted, you can't read much into that really. And then as this team keeps getting built for next year, because as I've said on this show, as I said on social media, as I've written about, as I've told the program to their face, year one, it can't be all bad. It's year one. I get it. You got back to the mean. You got back to where you were. Fine. Year two, it's pretty much a must NCAA tournament season. You got to get in. This fan base is not going to deal with missing another year, missing back-to-back years with the same coach, missing 4 years in a row. There is an incredible amount of pressure now. Ross Hodge is going to have to find a way, whatever the way he can get it done, to get this team in the tournament next year. It is a must tournament appearance for 2026, 2027. It just flat out is. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Port, West Virginia Sports Now. We will now turn the page to a team that is definitely in the NCAA tournament. Doesn't have to worry about getting in the NCAA tournament. Doesn't have to wipe sweat off their brow and can enjoy themselves, I guess, when they watch on Selection Sunday. In the last couple of years, they thought they knew they were getting in, and they didn't get to enjoy themselves because they would watch them put in a situation they thought was a disrespect. They would get a poor seed line. They'd have to go on the road. That if they won a game, they knew game 2 was going to be against Caitlin Clark, going to be against North Carolina, games that it's very unlikely to win on the road. This year, though, despite some hiccups in non-conference play, losing to Villanova by 30, some hiccups existed, and maybe a less talented team without a superstar. There's no WNBA player like Quinterly on this roster. They win the Big 12. They win a major conference championship, a loaded conference they are the champions of. Right now, it really looks like they're going to be hosting to start the NCAA tournament. I've heard it. They've heard it. People are talking about it. People are assuming it. It's not been officially announced as we're talking now, but if that doesn't go down, I think we know the program well enough, Luke and Kellogg well enough. If that doesn't happen, I'd put them on upset alert because emotionally they're gonna really be deflated. But they probably, and assuming they're going to host. Number one, I guess, taking the entire season into perspective, do you think they deserve to host if you're in charge of things? This is not a perfect resume despite being a Big 12 champion. You could argue they have more hiccups on the roster or on the resume than a year ago, but they won the Big 12. Like, do they deserve to host?
I absolutely think so.
Okay.
I truly do think so. I think the biggest argument I could see made about this team, and especially the way they finished, is that they did dodge the higher seeds in their first 2 games. Um,
Sure.
Arizona State beat Iowa State. That's a 10-7 matchup.
Yeah.
And then I forget which seed Baylor was, but whoever, well, Colorado beat them, and then they went down
Yeah.
to the wire with Colorado. Colorado's had a decent season this year, not trying to take anything away from that, or Arizona State. They made a great late push as well.
Yeah.
But I think that that would be something that you can look at to maybe nitpick on if you're on the committee. But they do have the most recent win against TCU. Now, you're 1-2 against them on the year. You beat them when it counted, and you beat
Yeah.
them on a neutral floor. I think
Yeah.
that that is enough. I mean, 27 wins this season, especially considering some of the wins that they've gotten, even some of their losses. I mean, they've gone right down to the wire. They went right down to the wire with Ohio State. The only real blemish on this
The
team's
TCU,
schedule
one of
is
the TCU losses, yeah, down the wire.
I think the only real blemish is that Villanova loss.
Yeah, that's really
That
bad. That's a
that
real
that's
bad
just a
loss.
really bad loss. But I mean, this is a team that with 5 players in the second half beat Duke,
Yeah, you were there. Yeah.
who I was there. It was incredible. They've won 10 out of their last 11 games. You can't use that Villanova loss as an excuse to keep them from hosting a regional. I just don't think you can do it. I don't think if you're a sane person on the committee, you can be okay with that. You beat Baylor by 10.
Yeah.
You ran right past Iowa State, number 11 at the time
Yeah.
in Ames, Iowa. Of course, you have a loss to Texas Tech in
You
there at
handled
home.
Arizona State. Arizona State, you handled them.
Handled Arizona State. You did that twice. You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
I think that I think that this team has done more than earn it. I absolutely think, you have an 8-2 away record,
Yeah.
14 wins at home.
Yeah.
Looking at this schedule, I mean, other than going undefeated and maybe winning a game against, Villanova that was just a fluke game,
Or at least don't lose by
unlike
30.
anything. What is it?
I said, at least don't lose by 30. Like, that's the
Yeah,
issue with that game. You didn't
I
just
that, that
lose.
I mean,
Upsets happen. You lost
that
by 30 at home. Real
yeah,
bad. Yeah.
that is unlike anything we've seen from one of Kellogg's teams.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I
It's an
just there's
outlier.
no way to explain it. But I don't think that you can make a good enough argument, even including that game, to keep this team out of Morgantown in the first round. I
Yeah.
absolutely do. I
Yeah.
I think that they've really hit their stride. They're getting hot at the right time, which is what the committee likes when it comes to seeding.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a 4 seed is the bare minimum for this WVU women's basketball team.
Yeah. And of course, if they did not win the Big 12 title, we probably wouldn't be talking about this. Of course, they'd be a tournament team, but they probably wouldn't be hosting. And the amazing situation that they're in now is, we talked about this on this show. Other people covering the program mentioned this, and maybe they just had that Villanova loss in the back of their mind. But for most of last season, people were saying, okay, if they do this and this, maybe they can host. The goal the whole year was vocally discussed as maybe they're primed to host, even the year before. This year, most of the season, and especially because you had that Villanova loss early, even with the Duke win, people were kind of saying, okay, they're good. They're going to be a tournament team. They're probably not going to host, though. Like after they lost to Villanova by 30, that was the commentary. Hosting's probably done. But they managed to turn it around, which is we talked about coaches in the last segment talking about the men, that their teams got worse as the season progressed. To Mark Kellogg's credit, his teams get better as the season goes on. And his team really got better as this season goes on. And Luke, even with that Villanova loss, and of course you're a Big 12 champion, you probably give it to him. This is probably his best coaching job at West Virginia. Going into the year, you lose Quinterly. People thought maybe they'd take a step back and not even make the tournament. You lose to Villanova, hosting's gone. You then even have that Duke win, but you cancel out with the Villanova loss. You get back though, and you go on this run in conference play, and even with a couple of hiccups there and some heartbreakers, like you lose in the buzzer beater, a lot of other teams would have folded, and then you never would have saw them be legit again. And yet this team rallies after buzzer beaters to turn around and win the Big 12 title and get revenge on TCU and beat them on a neutral floor and make up for those earlier losses. All of that has to be a credit to Mark Kellogg as a coach. 100%. And you're going to have to start worrying about keeping him around because he already got feelers last year. There's going to be some programs that are going to have open jobs that may call him. That might not be a guarantee forever, despite liking it in Morgantown. But this team absolutely does deserve to host for me, for sure. If they don't get to host, it probably is the Villanova game, which would really, really suck if that hurts them because that was just such an anomaly. It's the worst game of his career at West Virginia or prior. Like, it makes no sense. Makes no sense. And our Griffin Floyd, who's covered West Virginia women's basketball and also covered Villanova women's basketball, was as confused as anybody to see that result, and he was there covering it for us at the Coliseum. So it's nuts. It's nuts. And this team has done enough, though, since then by winning the conference tournament, a really good conference to win it. They should host. Now, assuming they're going to host, what's the prospects of this team in the tournament now? Because when you're hosting, you got a lot more pressure now on you. A very good team, a great team at home. They're dominant at home. I cannot imagine them losing at home, but crazier things have happened. But the last couple of years, you get in and getting one win and then going ahead, you're kind of in house money that if you lose to Caitlin Clark of North Carolina, no one's going to be mad at you, and the referees didn't help you either. When you're at home, you got pressure to get the job done. What's the prospect of this team to actually make a run? And what do you think the ceiling is of this team if they host versus when they were on the road in really tough places to play?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is part of the problem, right? Is if you're a 4 seed, you're going to have a 5 seed in your region, and you're going to be playing, odds are, somebody much closer to your level in that second game.
Yeah.
But I think that, WVU, that environment, that home environment, just is a defensive team's dream, is to have that be your situation.
Yeah.
And, like, to that first steal by Jordan Harrison that gets taken all the way back to the other end for a layup is going to put the Mountaineer crowd on its feet.
Yeah.
And that is just something that you don't get in an away game. You have many more opportunities to pick up momentum. Like, you're playing Caitlin Clark. Yeah, you might be up 5, but guess what? She's going to hit a 3-pointer from over near the media seats. Like,
Yeah.
that's just what's going to happen. It's going to be the opposite. I think WVU really does have a good chance to go on a run, and then if you make it to the Sweet 16, anybody can beat anybody. That is the
Yeah.
time of the season where anything can really happen, is the
Yeah.
Sweet 16 and beyond. And it's not like, I mean, my biggest gripe personally, and I said this before the season started, and I'll have to eat my words on this too, is that the Mountaineer squad this year being even smaller than years
Yeah,
past was something that worried me. But they just went out there and handled a TCU team that has two 6'7" players on its
that's what's
squad in
amazing
its
about that.
in its rotation, and they
Because
won the Big
TCU's
12 championship.
yeah,
That,
TCU
that I
seemed like
mean,
it was
they've
built to be
always
West
been a tall
Virginia.
team.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
mean
I
that
mean,
that team right there, the reason why they beat them twice in the regular season, that was like their kryptonite. Like
yeah.
that team, it, that was the worst matchup they could get in that conference championship game, and they won it anyway. Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, they've gone out there and they've handled business against teams who have the height advantage.
yeah,
So, and I'm not going to sit here and say that they've beat any teams that would compare to like an LSU or a South Carolina, anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But you can't write them off. You can't write them off on a neutral
No,
floor in Sacramento, or I think that's where they would end up going in the Sweet 16. I
with
think that
that
might be
defense, yeah,
that defense on a neutral floor is still going to be very disruptive.
yeah,
And, if they find ways to keep, getting opportunities inside despite the height disadvantage that they have, which, I mean, disadvantage might not even be the word because they're playing like right through it, like it's not even there. And
yeah.
that's what's been really special about this team so far this season.
Yeah, and as much as we talked about for the men that it looked like maybe their heart wasn't fully in it, or I don't know, like the effort wasn't always there. They had the dumb mistakes, the turnovers, the physical play. They're getting out physical in games. They were undersized and then they got out physical, and you could use size as an excuse. But the women's team was undersized and they didn't get out physical, and they were able to rebound anyway. And sometimes they're able to win matchups that it didn't make sense for them to win. Again, the Big 12 title game. So again, credit to the women's team, credit to Mark Kellogg, and also Luke, obviously as a program, obviously for Ren Baker, and obviously for Mountaineer fans. You'll want the men's team to be a perennial tournament team like they were for a long time under John Beeline and Bob Huggins, back-to-back Hall of Fame head coaches, and even a lineage going back to Jerry West. Like it's an historic program. For my money, it's a top 25 all-time program. You want them to get in the NCAA tournament. But if there's ever a year to continue this drought and have it be one more year of a miss, Luke, and then let Ross Hodge go on a run, it might kind of be cool to let the women's team get all the love this time. Like if they're going to host and the men aren't around, pack the Coliseum. Don't just have it be a good crowd for the women's team, have it be a good crowd for anybody. That thing should be packed to the brim. And there's a lot of great women's basketball fans out there, but I'm going to say also, if you're a fan of Mountaineer sports, but you don't necessarily care about the women's side of things that much, or you're a basketball fan around the area, but maybe you don't watch the women's game that much. If the men aren't in March Madness, the women are, and they have Lucas saying they have a legit chance set up now with a seed line and being able to host. And there's no Caitlin Clark anymore in your way. There's no real true superstar around that can carry a team. It's a lot more open this year in the women's game. They could do more than Sweet 16. They can make an Elite 8 run. It wouldn't be shocking. They could a Final Four run, get another Final Four to the history of West Virginia basketball, and have it be on the women's side this time. Like, support and give them what you would give the men's team if you only want to give, if you only want to do it this year because the men aren't there. Okay, let it be this year because they're hosting. They truly deserve that. They've been playing like it. I think they will get it. And that is a big deal to be able to host. But I don't mean to close it in this negative way, but I have to ask this question because, as I said, there's a lot more pressure now if you're going to be hosting and you're the Big 12 champs. And Kellogg's done a great job. This team has done a great job. You're mentioning getting to the Sweet 16 and you got to win those home games. It would be the second time ever for program history for the women's program to get to the Sweet 16. First since 92. The 92 team did not have to win as many games to get there. You're looking at one win to get there. This year already argues as the greatest season in program history. Certainly, if you get to the Sweet 16, it is factually even over any Big 12 title that Mike Carey won because they did not go on a run and they lost right away. If this team hosts and then gets to Sweet 16, this is the best season in program history for the women. But if they host and they lose at home and they do not get at least to the Sweet 16, how much does that take away the luster of the Big 12 title? Or can you separate the two? And then do you think the fan base can?
I think you can absolutely separate the two. I think that
Okay.
you still have I still think that you can have that feeling of remembering the hope that came with winning the Big 12 tournament. It's like it reminds me of like winning your division in the NFL, right? And maybe you get bounced first round in the playoffs. Been there. And I will say winning the division was still fun. It's a great time. But
Okay.
for this team to finally get over the hump in the Big 12, which is something that I felt like they had really struggled with
Yeah.
under Mark Kellogg so far.
They
Not a
weren't going
knock
on
on
runs
him.
despite being a
Yeah,
great team. They just would lose early. Yeah.
yeah, not a knock on him as a coach. But it's just something that they were finally able to overcome this year.
Yeah.
Kind of felt like there was a ceiling, there was a particular ceiling they were hitting in the Big 12, and it just what they couldn't really get past it, and they shattered it this season. And they made it to they won the Big 12 championship. And I think, they beat a team that had beaten them twice before. What they did this season is truly, truly special, and they should still get a banner in the Coliseum
Oh,
for it.
yeah. Yeah.
And they should, I don't think anybody will ever look at that column or that banner in the Coliseum and think, man, it sucks that they lost at home in the NCAA tournament. I don't think so. I think you'll remember I think you'll remember the fans showing up at 1:30 a.m. in the morning to congratulate them getting
Yeah.
home
You
on
were
a
there for
Sunday
that.
night.
Yeah.
That was really fun to see. Must have been about 50 people there, honestly, probably
Yeah.
more. I'm not very good at counting like that, like counting crowds. But we'll
Yeah.
just go with that for now. But you'll always have that. And even if it is the worst case scenario going into the NCAA tournament, you still have the Big 12 championship to keep a hold of. And I think that that's absolutely going to be one of the most special parts of the season. It is so far.
Yeah. This is an historic season, no matter what. This is a special year, no matter what. Certainly deserves a banner at the Coliseum, no matter what. A Big 12 title is a Big 12 title. Like, you're going to get a ring from it. The baseball programs won Big 12s and they didn't get to Omaha, but they have giant rings and the trophy and they put it on the wall. Like, all of that still counts. All of it's historic. It's the same thing. I mean, the football program has on the wall 15-time conference champion. It doesn't mean that you don't count those or those don't mean anything because, say, you wouldn't win the whole thing. It is a big deal what they've already accomplished. It 100% is. But I do think the overall season would lose a little bit of luster losing at home, to be fair. I mean, think of it this way. Number one, West Virginia's basketball season that fans remember very fondly now, and no one really around is going to talk about 1942 and their claim of a national title or any of the Jerry West years. 2010, you won the Big East when it was a gauntlet that they made a movie out of it. That everyone you could think would be a legit program in that era was in that freaking conference, and West Virginia won the conference tournament. But what did they then do? They went to the Final Four. If you would have just won the conference tournament and that's it, and lost early and lost in the first or second round and not done anything in the tournament, you get a banner, sure. Do you see how big that 2010 Final Four freaking banner is in the Coliseum? It wouldn't be that big if you lost earlier. It wouldn't be that big. It'd be a little different. And even going to this year, Mark Kellogg said the goal is to win the Big 12, so meaning a goal for an end to what they want. You achieve that goal and you get the other goal of being able to host. He spent 2 years, Luke, to be fair. He's a great coach, but he spent 2 years, let's call it what it is, kind of complaining about the situations on the road in the NCAA tournament. He fixed it by winning the Big 12. And we talked about even then, the reason why you're in those situations, you didn't do anything in your conference tournament. So you're not going to host when you lose right away. He now won the conference. He's going to host. So you can't go ahead and then lay an egg. I mean, you got what you wanted. You did what you said you had to do to get hosting. Now you got to win at least at home. Get to the Sweet 16, make it the greatest preseason in program history, get off the 92 snide, win at home like you said you would do if you ever got to host, play for the crowd. They're going to bring it. And then if you lose after being at home, okay. You got to at least get the wins at home for me. It's still a banner. It's still a ring. It's still a great year. But I don't think it's the greatest season in program history if you lose right away. I think Mike Carey's 2017 team probably would still have that. You at least would be in an argument. And it would absolutely lose a little luster for me. I mean, I think the 2010 season for the men's and for Huggins would be reflected on a little different if you just win the Big East and then you lose in the second round. That Final Four is a big freaking deal. I'm not saying the women got to go to the Final Four, but I think you got to at least get to the Sweet 16. Like, that's your goal. You got to get there. You got to win the home games. You got to do that after winning this Big 12. And then you're sitting pretty, really, historically, for the program if you're Mark Kellogg. But I also think they will. I'm not saying they're not going to. I'm not doubting them. I think they will. But there's a little added pressure now. There's no more weight of the world on everyone else's shoulder, and we're getting screwed, and we're the little man, and the refs are out to get us. You can't claim the refs are out to get you if you're home. Like, you got to show up and you got to win the home game. I just don't want to hear
that.
Well,
it's not like WVU gets a home whistle, though, oftentimes.
Well, I guess. But, like, you're at home. Like, you play really well at home.
Yeah.
I don't want to have them lose, certainly right away in the first game, but even the second game. I just don't want to hear, like, the refs screwed us again. Like, that's not going to work as much in the offseason at home. I could hear it the last couple of years. It's not going to work as much in the offseason at home. I think there's pressure to at least get the wins at home. The rest of it then is gravy. But you want a big banner. I mean, that's all. We'll leave the show here, but that'll be another funny thing, Luke. I mean, you see, they got all the banners in the Coliseum. They're going to get one at least for the Big 12 title. You got the 3 big banners right now, which, as I said, is the 42 claim, the 2010 Final Four under Huggins, and the 1959 team under Jerry West that got to the championship game and lost in a very, very close one, which would have been an NCAA championship. Those are the 3 big banners. If the women get to a Final Four, do you give them a big one? Do you got to have 4 big banners up there? It's their home too. Is it just men's banners who get to be big? Obviously, if the women win a national title, I got to be up there. That got to be a big banner, I would think. I mean, I don't know if you take one of those 3 down that I mentioned because they're all special in their own right, but you got to have 4 up there that are big. I don't think it should be a little small banner for women's Final Four. But again, you want a big banner. You want that argument. You got to do a little bit more than as is. I don't think you warrant a big, giant banner with those 3 if you just do this, and then that's it. That'll do it for this show, though. Luke Blain, Mike Asti here, Mountaineer Report. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment to us if you want. You can find this show everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. And, of course, here on YouTube and throughout the West Virginia Sports Now Network. And whatever happened to the men and whatever happens to the women's, we will have coverage here, of course, throughout the WVSN network.